This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megafoon Rugby.
Welcome back to this very special Lekker Rugby Pod episode. And some of the New Zealand commentators told us to get some dignity in our next live. So we thought, you know what, better way to find dignity to get the four uncles together, the four old wise men, or three wise men and myself of the Megafoon Lekker Rugby Pod channel. So all three of you, welcome. Harry and Jan de Koning and Arrie Hougaard. I mean, where do you get a nicer bunch of guys and a wiser bunch of guys? So welcome, Harry. You tell us what we want to do. You came up with the idea, so tell us what the thinking is.
My greatest joy in this podcast is going to be distinguishing between Arrie and Harry out of your mouth, MV. That's going to be great.
Yeah.
Just make sure to put a lot of air behind that. No, what we're trying to do is not predict what Rassie and Co, Felix, Stick, and Don and those guys are going to pick. But actually, within the confines of what they've been doing, you know, sort of honor the fact that we know what Springbok rugby looks like nowadays. Try to come up with a mythical, imaginary Test 1 team. And I even want to caveat that. I think Test 2 is different. But Test 1 is going to be, premium. And so what will they put out there is one issue. What do we think they should put out there is what we're talking about today. So there's no need for that didn't age well type comments. We also want to sort of framework what type of rugby we think, we have to recruit for. So Jan, I know we talk a lot about style and so forth. This channel has all kinds of things now, 100 ruck traps and high CPR and KFC. Bottom line is the Boks like to play at a certain place in the field. They like to make the other team play where they don't want to play. And they always like to feed off defense into attack, right?
Yeah, I'm all good. I'm good for it. I've got a vague idea of the type of team I'd like to be put in the field, and yeah, I'm chilled. I've got a fairly good idea of how Rassie's mind works, which is nobody can ever know what he's going to say or do. So that's exactly how his mind works. So
thanks, Harry. Yeah, from my side, I think it's so much to take into consideration. I think what's nice about this discussion is it's lots to take into discussion in consideration about the 3 games that the All Blacks played. Just trying to understand how Rassie's thoughts were in the Nations Championship or the Nations League, what do you call it? Playing against European teams. And then also we haven't played the All Blacks in a while. So trying to think how he was thinking in that Auckland-Wellington games and pulling it through to 2026.
Yeah, it's interesting because we often look at the last game played, but it's important that Razor is not around anymore and the meek and mild sort of version of the All Blacks. This is a full, violent, brutal cleaning, you and your dog and your mother kind of cleaning Rennie's bringing to our shores. And it's been interesting to watch. I think it's attritional for the All Blacks as well, that there'll be plenty of guys flying back to New Zealand soon, but it also obviously is going to be attritional for us. So when we talk about this Test 1, make no mistake, we know that Test 2 and 3 going to be different people on the field probably. So MVA, why don't we kick off and try to pick a Bok team?
Yeah, I think I like the idea you suggested that we start with the bench because we know Rassie likes to end with a certain team in his mind. So let's look at the bench firstly. Do you start with a 7-1, a 6-2, a 5-3? What's your thoughts on that? And how does it, is it a 4 and a 2 or whatever, and a 1.5 and a little bit of that and whatever else, hybrids and the likes? Harry, just your thoughts on the bench quickly.
Yeah, I think we can rule out 4-4 and we can rule out 8-0. So that's not going to be 8-0.
For now.
Increasingly, 7-1 hasn't been seen. So it's almost like we're choosing between 6-2 and 5-3. The 5-3 is if you have Andre the Giant playing hybrid. So he can come on at 8, he can come on at 6, he can come on at 7, and you sort of use him as that extra. But I would say that lately it's just seemed very obvious that the team functions best when it's about 6-2. Puts a lot of onus on whoever the player 23 is. But I think, guys, it's between 5-3 and 6-2. I don't know about you guys.
yeah, I agree with you. I think the word you use is a hybrid. So your bench is a hybrid, and the hybrid is Andre because it allows you to pick. It might look like a 5-3 to you, but it's actually a 6-2. And if Andre is there, you can have a lot more hybrid players and other positions. In fact, your entire bench could be hybrid players who can play more than one position, except maybe one of the props.
Yeah, Ari, what do you think about that? Because I think if we know what that is, it helps us pick. It actually does affect how we pick the starter in a way as well.
Yeah, I was looking at a little bit what he did against European teams in November. I know it's a while back, but it's just an indication. I was thinking even then, taking the 2 tests in New Zealand into consideration. New coach, I agree, but it is an indication of playing the same team. And then what he did in the Nations Championship as well. He's been picking mostly 5-3. So against Ireland and France last year, November, it was 5-3 with Andre being the one reserve in the backline, and also against England. I think that's the one indication what he's thinking is when he had a kind of the only time when he picked kind of his strongest team was against England when they came over, definitely his strongest 15. And he didn't pick a 10 there. Remember, he had Kane Moody and Quibers there on the bench as well. I think he'll probably lean towards a 5-5-3 is my thought.
Next question. Is it a fetcher, Harry? Is Paul de Villiers going to make his debut? Was he mothballed for a reason? Was Dion Fourie brought back for a reason? Fetcher, yes or no?
Yeah, I'll go Fetcher. The return of the Fetcher, because I think there's so many rucks now being built and so many breakdowns pre-ruck being built that you need a slower. The All Blacks are basically putting all their chips in Vegas, put everything on red 17 or whatever it is. Just say, we're going to keep building rucks and keep ball alive, KBA, and then concertina come around the swinging attack where there's always a pullback, always a throwback, always a pullback, and just keep going. The way you shove that metal spike into the spokes of the bicycle, the pretty bicycle that Leinster builds, and now All Blacks, is you have someone that intervenes in the ruck, gets over the ball. And yes, it's good that Malcolm Marx can do that. Damon Diolande is very good at that from the back line. And obviously you have, a lot of people can get over the ball. But there's something next level about a guy like Paul de Villiers or Dion Fourie. I think Cameron Hanekom also can be that guy who can just negate, just absolutely. And we've seen it done to us. David Pocock did it to one-man band. But it's other people as well. Ty Byrne can do that at times and just absolutely gum up the works. So for me, and also because Paul de Villiers was kept in country and not go to Argentina, and Dion Fourie was the first man called up, I think that's a signal that we're going with ruck beasts, the actual ruck monkeys. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I want to latch onto that. The important thing is that Paul de Villiers starting, and I would like him to start, but the Paul de Villiers starting depends on Sia's fitness. So if Sia is not fit, Paul de Villiers is a definite starter. If Sia is starting, he'll captain the team. We know that. We all know that. And then Paul de Villiers is on the bench. So that question is a couple of things. We spoke about Andre Esterhuizen. Yeah, again, what you do on the bench depends on whether Sia is fit or not, because that impacts on what you select or are available on the bench.
Yeah, I agree. It's important, but I think also what we saw against Scotland and England was how difficult it is to actually get those let's say there's penalties in that situation, with de Villiers being close many times but didn't get rewarded often, but he was there enough to spoil and slow down enough and to make a difference there. I think we saw it against the Bulls, what difference Anton Segner made, but he was allowed to play more. And I think there he had maybe Liebenberg that was a bit slower than Pieter-Steph du Toit would be in that argument, and you'll have different pressures there. So in Test rugby at that level, you don't see that many turnovers, but we underestimate what hands in there and what's slowing it down and just creating time for the defense to get out. So I think definitely I agree with Jan as well. It depends on Sia's fitness, but I think we'll see de Villiers in there. I think he will be above Fourie in the argument.
All right, the KFC quickly kicking or not? And last night against the All Blacks, the Bulls only kicked, I think, twice contestable kicks. The Springboks do a lot more of those. Again, Harry, your thoughts on, are the Springboks going to kick more or kick less?
Yeah, the difference between sort of the Ellis Park fiasco against the Wallabies and then games following that is the Springboks really made sure that there was enough attacking kicks of variety, that it was never just a matter of off to the races for teams like the Wallabies, who have good Max Jorgensen type guys, Tom Wright kind of guys. So Tony Brown really wants the other team not to know exactly what's going to happen. And there was far too much of that predictable. Now the kick attack for the Boks is next level. There were matches in the Nations Championship where we had over 20 attacking kicks. There were plenty of times where there were over 10 contestables. You look at the difference between the scoreboard pressure applied by the Stormers, similarly undermanned as the Bulls, but by putting 7 contestables up and getting 6 back with Sanatla really owning Bowden Barrett on the night. And also, the scraps merchants. If the Bulls had been able to do that earlier in the match, and you get that scoreboard pressure, 14-all at 65 minutes, it's a different look instead of just trying to always run it from everywhere. I don't think there's any way to get away from it. The guys like Mani Lebok and Sasha Feinberg-Mngomezulu are absolute magicians with the different types of kicks, and that's specifically who Tony Brown said he likes to coach. And he was chuffed to be able to work with Grant Williams, to work with guys like Kobus Reiner, who have really educated boots. And we haven't even talked about Willemse, who's really a master with that as well. So, and Andre Esterhuizen is a great with the kick. So all those things combining, I think we are wedded to that. Just like the All Blacks cannot suddenly shift the big battleship and turn it around in the harbor suddenly and go, no, we're going to be kicking a team. It's going to be the best CPR team against the best KFC team.
Again, I want to latch on to that. I think our pointer should be the game in Argentina BA, where the Springboks kicked very cleverly. After going behind early and conceding an early try, they kept Argentina tryless because they adjusted their defense and they adjusted their kicking. And you're speaking about contestables. There were a couple of Andre Pollard kicks late in that second half. We literally pinned them right back in the corners. And that's the type of kicks that's going to not confuse the All Blacks. It's going to trouble the All Blacks because they like to have 3-4 guys back and start running. And like you say, throwing those loopy passes and stretch you wide. When you get pinned back in your own 20 and you're far behind your forwards don't get to those rucks. And the Springbok forwards on the front foot. That's a very different challenge to what the All Blacks have faced so far on the tour.
Yes, I think in Ellis Park, also taking into consideration, it's a different kicking game there. The ball flies longer distances. Your fullbacks and wings typically a few meters further back as well. So that's it's about tactically getting field position first, also contestables. And we haven't spoken about Tony Ball a lot because there were other things that came into it, the KFCs, etc. But when you get those contestables back, the Tony Ball kicks in. And South Africa very dangerous there. So it's attacking mode. There's also defensive kicks, of course, but I think tactically they'll use it quite a bit, but they won't go away to put the teams under pressure with good contestables. That's been working for the Boks. And also the All Blacks scored 22 tries on the 2 and 3 games. They're not going to get that space and bad kicks onto them again, and defense is sitting back, and they're going to get contestables. They're going to get pressure. So I think that kicks is very key. But when the ball comes back, we're going to see Tony Ball.
Right, into the nitty-gritty. Yeah, back three. Let's start with the back three. Harry, I think 2 of those 3 players picked themselves. Let's start with you. What do you think?
Cheslin Colby, generational player. Almost every team in the world would like to have him, put him down first. For me, Fassi hasn't shown enough to unseat Damian Willemse. Willemse also has that remarkable ability to play 12 or first receiver late in games. So you finish with Willemse on regardless, and you finish with Cheslin Colby on. So the only question is, has KLA, has Arends, one of the Lekkerbacks, has he lost a step enough to bring in Ethan Hooker? And Ethan Hooker is okay and Moody. Their value there would be kick chase, the ability to get up 6'4", 1.9 something. Who knows? It's difficult. Then it puts a lot of pressure on the All Blacks because you have a tall winger coming at you with speed. So that's, for me, that's my question mark. And I literally go back and forth between Kurtley and Ethan.
But you have to choose.
If I had to choose right now on the test one, I go Hooker, because I want to give the All Blacks something difficult to work with. And I remember Wellington and how self-assured Ethan was far from home. And I just want to see more of that. And I have kind of thought that Kurtley maybe has lost a step. Just my look.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Damien at fullback, because it frees up a playmaker, an additional playmaker if you need. And I agree with Cheslin. I mean, he is definitely the first name on the team sheet. I'm tempted to go for Kanan rather because, but I know Hooker is good in the air as well. But I think Kanan is that type of player, that tall type of player. And the one thing I have noticed, and I went to a couple of All Black practices, is that the one thing they don't practice is aerial kicks. They stay on the ground. The only people that go off the ground is the locks when they from the restarts. What they have practiced a lot is those offloads. I mean, in training, they practice those offloads deliberately, one-on-one players offloading. And then the other thing which I've noticed, and they caught the Bulls with that, is when you start charging them on their try line, they literally grab the ball and drag you over their try line. They don't resist you. They drag you over there, and they train that. They've been in training like that. So that's why I say they don't get off the ground. So you pick the tall guy to go off the ground. So my back three would definitely be Damien, Cheslin, and Kanan.
Yeah, from my side also, Damien and Colby is the given for me. I think the interesting selection would be 11, and I'll go there with also with Hougaard. The reason why I say that, I think, and there's a little bit of a few clues from Rassie's side as well. He played 11 against the Pumas, not all because of that, but he played also. I think it's difficult for Rassie to get away from that last Wellington game as well. I know it's different coaches, a long time ago, etc. But you do look at what happened last time. He had success against this team, and when he came in and played 11 again in Wellington, he was not only for the kicking, that's obvious, but also in attack. And I think his attacking is very good. I think at times when he picked both Colby and Hougaard, he had them moved around. He had Colby on the left and Hougaard on the right. He was playing around a bit there. It seemed to settle that Colby stays 14 and Hougaard goes 11. But I will go Hougaard 11 because of his attacking ability and also his length in high balls contesting.
All right, seems like Hougaard is the 2-1 favorite. I'll leave my casting vote for the end because we'll see how it pans out. Where Moody's going to end up is going to be a 13 on the bench or not at all. We'll see. I'll just keep my cards up my sleeve here. Right, let's move on to the centre pairing. I think this is the easiest one of all of them. What do you think, Harry?
Yeah, I think we basically got Dukes and Jesse and I think we've decided 5-3. So then Andre slots in. And as we said, you could put those guys anywhere because Andre could slot in there, but he could also slot in the forwards. Damien Willemse could move in for Damien de Allende. Sometimes they even put him in there for man of the match pictures. Confuse the opposition. No, I think that's solid. I mean, we're actually looking at something magnificent, Jan, to watch Damien and Jesse. There's been times when Lucanio Arm was part of that picture, but I mean, just on the main, they were on the pitch in 2015 in the semi-final together. Young Jesse and Damien. Yeah. Here they are still going.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, they're the most capped Springbok centre combination of all time. There's been some great ones. I mean, you're thinking of Jean and Dani and those guys. Okay, then Dani's era, they didn't play much rugby. But you think of some really great combinations. And I think this two are suited to the modern game. Because Jesse is the most underrated defensive manager.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, he missed so many tackles." Oh, Damien. The guys don't realize what they do. They don't see those little offloads, and you only need one decent offload in a game to swing the momentum, to swing the game. And I think as a combination, they read each other so well. They know. Same with Cheslin. He understands those two guys. And Damien Willemse also, that he understands those two guys. So no, it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's those two definitely. I think I agree with the defensive capabilities. We forget how challenging it's going to be in the first test with what the All Blacks offer in 12 and 13, especially the 13 channel. So even if it's Tapo or if it's Yani, whoever's going to play 13, you need to be organised there. So I think Creel and Delende settled there. So I think attacking and defence. So they had the wake-up call in Auckland when they didn't play well and all those stars were dropped. Maybe William, Pollard and Eben and all of them, and they were the two centres as well. Maybe that was their wake-up call to pull them through. Sometimes you need a bit of a shake-up like that. But since then, they were like the first choice. But we know what we have. Remember that game in Wellington, it was Willemse and Moody that played brilliantly, 12 and 13. So that's why my argument again, briefly, that's why I would have Moody or Hougaard as your starting wing because they can both play 13 as well if need be.
Well, I think it's going to be the same thing. The second test is going to look markedly different to the first test because we think it's going to be different, different styles of play. But let's move on to I think probably the biggest talking point, 10 and 9. And I mean, now the whole population is going to say, off with their heads, whatever we choose, we're going to be wrong. So Harry, venture forth, you go first.
Get your helmets on,
I'm glad
guys.
the sequence is like that he starts all the time, so it's better.
Get your helmets on and your gloves on. This is going to get brutal. So I'll start with the sort of thing of who finishes. I think Kobus Reinach is the steady head you want at the end of a match if it's all down to it. You know, it's a couple of cookies here and there. I want Kobus to be one drawing the strings, play off 9 actually. And then partly because of partnerships, then for me, I want to finish with either Pollard or Sasha with Kobus. And I'm going to go with Sasha because of the high felt and because of the first test. I think we want to see what we can do and really stretch these guys. Recognized goal kicker, not as good as Pollard, but still can nail them from 60 from far out. We saw Sasha nail one from out. So for me, Kobus, the Stormer pairs, Kobus and Sasha at 9-10. And then that makes me start with Grant Williams and Manie Libbok. Speed on speed. Speed of thought, speed of kick as well. Manie is so good at pulling the string. He has a quick release on everything he does. And I think he could find holes in the All Black defense who have not faced anything like that from the provincial games. And also, I quite like the way Grant and Manie fit together and have shown together. And I think they also have good memories of beating the All Blacks. I think Grant Williams is one of those guys in World Rugby that's super underrated in that he can make his own shot. He can just, from the base, he's quick enough to get around Cam Roygaard. And I think Cam Roygaard being the centerpiece of All Blacks, anything to demoralize him, to beat him, to make him vulnerable, to make him think twice. And you're going against Ruben Love, also a very young playmaker. You want to really make him think. And I think Manie Libbok is hard to prepare for. Sasha is impossible to prepare for. That's my 4, those guys.
Yeah, I'll agree with your starters, Libbok and Williams. I mean, for all the reasons you said, there's just no question. It's like my center pairing. And I know there's a lot of people that will say, I don't like Sasha. It's not that I don't like Sasha. It doesn't. His occasional brain fart doesn't make him a bad player. He's an extremely talented player. I just think for the first test, you want your best finishers, like you said. And that's why I think people sometimes forget that Pollard is undoubtedly the world's greatest finisher, and he's proven it over and over again at the highest level. So my 2 bench would be Pollard and Reinach for the same reasons that you said, Arrie.
Yeah, same thought here. I see them also as combinations, and because Rassie has been seeing them as combinations, it seems like he's got Williams and Libbok together the whole time, and mostly, and Reinach and Sasha. And I also like the idea. That was my idea as well from the beginning. Before I heard you guys speak, apologies to have Reinach more in the end of the game with the experience and that kind of experience onto the field and finishing the last 30 minutes, 20 minutes if need be, and with Sasha also being a little bit rusty. And I think that's Libbok and Williams started for the game against England, and they played a little bit more. And I think they either settled 9-10 maybe to start. I think also agree. I would think that Williams and Libbok can start with Sasha and Reinach coming up. And I think there's a good chance, I don't want to look at that too far ahead, but probably a good chance Sasha will start in Cape Town on a pitch that he knows well. Libbok knows it well, but Sasha will be comfortable there.
Arrie mentioned the word rusty now, and both Reinach and Sasha looked very rusty against Argentina. I mean, they were injured for a long time. Reinach as well, quite severe injuries. Reinach also looked a little bit slower than he used to be, maybe not just match fit or anything. Just your thoughts on that? How much of a factor will the rustiness thing be?
Yeah, I think Reinach is that type of player, and he's shown it before, that you get that one dust off that you need, and his dust off was in BA. So I'm happy that he'll be a much better version. You can say the same of Sasha. Of course, people are going to say the same of Sasha. I just think Sasha, even at the top of his game, has those occasional moments where he doesn't do the right thing. He can have a 90% game, but against the All Blacks, that 10% is could be that cost you. And I still want a Pollard there. So can they get back after? Yes, of course they can. I mean, there's no doubt. So yes, Sasha you can make an argument for Sasha. I'm still going to go with Pollard and Reinach, because I'm sure Reinach will be much better for his run out last time.
Yeah, it's impossible to dismiss Jan any argument against for Pollard. I mean, he's such a finisher. He's proven under the lights. On Sasha, you're exactly right about errors. So if you look at actual errors made in the URC, I mean, he leads. He's one of the top of the table on errors. But then you look across on try involvements, try creations, defenders beaten. He's also leading that too. So he strikes me as one of those full-blown riverboat gambler type players, sort of Willie the Roo back when he was young, where you kind of want to have him on there because the only one who can unlock certain defenses. My argument for Sasha, and I think it comes down to this, Pollard versus Sasha, is I feel like he knows how to unlock the All Blacks, and I think maybe this is my key. He doesn't have any fear. And I think there's a part of some of the older guard that got used to losing to the All Blacks. And Sasha and Hooker and Kanan, these guys don't even remember that. For them, they're the boss.
Pollard also knows how to beat the All Blacks. He did it at under 20 level and at senior level in World Cup finals.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Pollard is a banker in terms of his kicking abilities. There's been a few games that he did miss a few as well, but I think what is a factor, if you say Libbok starts with Williams and you have Colby kicking again against England, that's what they did. So I don't know if they're going to do the same, what happens on the training field, but it is a bit of a challenge there. Who's going to kick if Libbok starts? Is he going to give it to Libbok? Is he going to give it again to Colby like he did against England? So that is a factor. The kicking is going to come down to making conversions and making penalties in this series. It's going to be tough and tight. So yes, there is an argument for Pollard. I think Sasha also, what he offers when he comes on is a bit more presence, a bit more physicality on the defense, and Ruben loves to play the gain line. He's been used to playing the gain line a lot in his rugby, the franchise rugby that they played. He's going to experience a little bit of a different defensive system, and he's going to also run into Pieter-Steph du Toit. But I would still think that Sasha is probably in the mind. If you try to think what Rassie is thinking, I would think that he's going to go with Sasha, but with Libbok starting.
Harry, just one thing. There's a marked difference in style between Sasha and Manie. Manie is the ultimate passer, what do you call it, and Sasha is a more individualistic player. Let's call it that. Let's be kind. What effect is that going to have?
Distribution by Manie is hard to beat. It's almost like Finn Russell level. I think those two guys would, in their ability to throw a ball very fast, very quickly and far without any effort, if that's the right description, like just wrist. I don't know what's going on there in Manie's wrist. It's incredible what he can whip. Sasha does actually include people, but it's usually with a kick. I mean, he can find Colby on diagonal kicks on the run, but done it several times now. And also the kick through that Pollard did for Creel is another form of contestable where it's a grubber, but it's really only Jesse's going to be onto it and it runs in, untouched. So there's all three guys bring other players in. That's just different. Manie, I would say, is more the almost throwback to almost like a New Zealand playmaker where it's all about the hands. I think, Sasha's got a unique ability to beat you. He's hard to put down on first tackle. And I quite like that against Ruben Love. I mean, what has Ruben Love seen at test level? Nothing. I quite like it. And I think maybe the All Blacks were more scared of Sasha. And I think that they will game plan around him more because he's a difficult guy to game plan for. So those are my arguments. I absolutely respect Jan's pick there. Pollard, the 9 lives of Pollard in knockout rugby. Jeez, there's never been a guy better at closing, the really tightest games than Pollard.
I just want to check now. So we agreed on Manie and Grant at 9 and 10 for the starting lineup. Harry, you've got Sasha and Reinach on the bench. Jan's got Pollard and Reinach on the bench. Harry, I just want to confirm who you've got on the bench there.
I've got Sasha and Reinach on the bench, yeah.
Sasha and Reinach. So I think
MV, you got some deciding votes to make.
Yeah, man, I like this power.
We call it evens.
Anyway, okay, I'm happy with this. Ari, I'm going to start with you for the next one, the number 8, 7, and 6, the loose trios. And we talked here about fetches and everything. Again, 2 players pick themselves. I mean, it's getting a bit boring. Tell me about that, and then tell me about the one that doesn't pick himself.
Yeah, the two you talk about that pick themselves is obviously Visa and Pieter-Steph. So blessed to have them. And we have not really like for like, but you have Ben Jason Dixon to have a backup. You can probably look at who's not there when you mention those 2 names first. You have Cameron Hanekom and Ben Jason Dixon, and then the 2 sixes, 3 sixes. So it's going to be all depending on if Sasha is fit. I think we haven't had much news. I think Sia. We can try him at 6 as lots of S's. Sia can play if he's fit and he will start, and then it's I would go for De Villiers to be on the bench as the as the 6 and have Sasha Sia to start. So that will be, if he's fit enough, I will start him. It's you kind of lean also to Marco van Staden in the argument in his experience. But I think the only thing about Paul de Villiers is that he didn't play that many games. But what we've seen, it's going to be a tough ask for him to start. So if Sia's not playing, will he be brave enough to say, but have Van Staden start or even Fourie? But I would think if I should pick them now, I will go Wiese and obviously Pieter-Steph and Sia to start. Depending on his fitness, if he's not starting, then I'll still start for Paul de Villiers if Sia is not fit.
Only one question: is Sia fit? If Sia is fit, he starts. If he's not, Paul de Villiers starts. And if Sia is fit, that obviously impacts your bench, because now you perhaps can't afford to select 2 locks because you've got to make space for Paul de Villiers on the bench. So yeah, it's a simple question: is Sia's fit, he starts.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that Sia's not fit for the first 2 tests. That's what I'm hearing. So I'll say Paul, Pieter-Steph, and Jasper. And, when we get into the sort of bench cohorts, Ari is exactly right. I think Ben Jason Dixon is seen as the like-for-like in case Pieter-Steph goes down early. And we have a lock problem. So we have tweeners. We have these hybrids like Kobus Wiese. But if we go 5-3, we cannot stack the bench with a Cameron Honeycomb as well, or Elder Low. So it sort of makes its own decision. I think Paul is the beneficiary then, but I start him in this case because I don't think Sia is going to be back.
Harry, let's move on to the locks. I mean, that's quite important. Who's going to call the lineouts, Harry? Rassie made it clear that the number 5 lock is a lineout caller. It might not be the number 4, maybe in our classical thinking. So who's your starting lock pair?
It's Ruan is going to be the lineout caller, so he's 5. And I think there's question marks about Eben for the first time in his career ever. But I stick with Eben. And I always say for the old lion like him who played 80 in Buenos Aires, show me again, go again. And also I think he has a point to prove. He wants to vindicate himself from an eye gouge situation and finish strong. But there's a question mark on him. And so only because there's a lock crisis maybe is it sort of like we have to slot him in. But otherwise we'd be looking at Eben. And so I think there's pressure on him. Nortia is the guy who can call a line out, but also he's so strong on the work ethic. So it allows Kobus Wiese to come in without having to spend so many minutes. I think, Ruan obviously can play 80 if he wants, just like Pieter-Steph. So, yeah, I think it's the stamina that actually helps there.
I'll agree with that. Ruan to start. There's just one thing in my mind that keeps nagging me, whether I start with Lut or Ruan. The something Rassie said a while ago when I asked him about starting Lut first up a week or so ago. The thing is, if you start with Ruan and he gets injured early, you don't know how long Lut can go for. So that's why he prefers to start Lut, and that makes sense to me. It's not what I would do, but he prefers to start Lut and then have Ruan, that big engine, as a backup. I would still, my preferred starting deal in the second row is definitely Ruan and Eben. And also Eben, I know that he hasn't played for a while, and like Harry said, he's got maybe a couple of things that he wants to prove. I think in that BA match, he really proved that he's still got the engine. Maybe he wasn't as dynamic as everybody thought he should be, but he did a lot of dirty work in the dark places. He went into those dark places, like they like to call it, and he really had a hell of a good game in my view. So yeah, Ruan and Eben.
Yeah, for me the same, and it's Ruan 5 for me, Eben at 4, and Lut on the bench. And why I say that he will lean towards both Lut and Eben is it's going to be lots of value to have those players with lots of experience. And in this first test, it's going to be arm wrestle, like Jan said. Now it's going to try and get them into the dark places, and you need all those experience. And I think Lut and Eben will offer that for you. And I think Eben did actually quite well against Argentina in terms of his fitness. He was surprisingly long on the field and did okay. But I agree with the risk of losing maybe Ruan early and Lut coming on early then is a challenge. But I think the experience of those players and the physicality and what they offer, they know the situations, is going to be lots of pressure. I think they're going to be worth a lot. So I'll go for those 3.
Is it weird that this is the locks are where I'm the most unsettled? I mean, when has that ever been the case? For a long time, that's what we had. over everyone else. And right now, I'm thinking on every other positional group, I feel better. I think we're better than the All Blacks on every single cohort we just discussed. And then I get to the locks, and I'm like, oof, Holland, Darry, Lord, Tupoloto, really settled big guys. They can really go.
And fast. We saw it last night.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried about that. I'm a bit worried about our, Archie has a big hole to fill, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's argument for Kobus Wiese that actually did well. So the inexperience is going to be maybe something that's coming into play, but he's a very strong 4-lock coming forward now, and he did well. So if you need a bit of younger blood, but I agree, we're thinner there, and the threat from what the All Blacks offer is real there, and they're going to have probably Vai at number 6 or as a loop forward as well. So there's going to be more physicality there as well. So there's another lock for them on the field as well. So we need to have players there that's fit. So I think we're not at the training ground. I would love to be just next to the training ground and just see how Loert is doing to be able to kind of give a good answer to this. But hopefully he's fit enough to be in selection.
Jan, just one thing I want to ask from you. We didn't really shoot the lights out in the lineouts in any of the tests, if I remember correctly. And we had all of these names, playing in those games. What's going on with the lineouts? Do we have a problem with lineouts? Never mind just at lock.
I would think the issue in the lineouts would be the same as some other combinations. It's because the combination, the lock, the second row changed every single game. And I think that might be it. The guys are getting a chance to play, and then they're not settled. If you have a settled, like the All Blacks, Harry mentioned it. If you have a settled combination, 2 or 4 settled locks, the hooker gets lots of time to practice with those locks. You get lots of game time with those locks. In our games, the hookers changed and the locks changed, and there wasn't a lot of time for the players to settle in combinations, and you had some really good contesting opposition, which might have been valuable to us, more valuable to us than we think, because that taught those guys to think on their feet on the field and make changes. And that's where calling the lineouts is going to be vital, because somebody who can read the game and then decide maybe just go for the number 2, the number 4 ball, just go up front and win the ball first, and then try and play off there, rather than try and go for the deep lobs and do all those funny things, run around in the lineout, and it doesn't work. So I think the experience that we gained from struggling in those 3 Nations Championship matches, and to a lesser extent against Argentina, will make sure the guys are aware and alert on the field on next Saturday.
Harry, it brings me back to the rustiness factor, because like Jan just said, we haven't played the same combinations, more than once in a row, I suppose, or not that often. To try and get your rustiness out of your system in the first test against the All Blacks, probably the most important game of the entire tour. Isn't that a bit of a risk, or am I reading too much into it?
Well, particularly at lineouts. I think lineouts are one of those rote practice things that you can get down to such a smooth science, hanging out with the Stormers and being around them, watching Coach Rito work. It's just over and over and over and over. And, I want your hands to be here on the hamstring, not under the hamstring, not over the hamstring, but right here. They're very, very particular, because when you looked at, Bulls got tall locks, getting nice lifts, but the All Blacks met them in the air and were able to get higher than them repetitively. And so Grobbelaar was throwing into the All Black lock. There is a point in lineouts where you can make optimals. If you've got the right lifter, if Kobus Wiese is lifting Ibn Etzebeth, it's going to be pretty high. And if I meet you at the apex, you should get that every single time on a banker ball, front ball. There's something about that hasn't worked. So I think you're exactly right, Envia, to watch that as a potential problem. And it's all around this thing I'm talking about, which is the lock crisis feeds into the lineout crisis, feeds into how do you finish games. We've owned the final 20 minutes, but we all know that lineouts are a really important part in finishing games strong and taking your attack sets. I'm not happy with that so far. And I think that the All Blacks have circled that and said, put so much pressure on the first 5 throws on lineouts in the first test, rattle them. We've seen how many times, Artie, you've seen how many times a team gets rattled by not having a clean lineout ball. It's their source of attack.
Yeah, indeed, Harry. I think it's an important component of the game, and we know Victor Matfield's been known for that, to analyze and to understand what's happening in the lineouts. I think the benefit the Springboks have is that they've played these different combinations. So it's difficult maybe for All Blacks to kind of figure out what's going to happen in those first lineouts. They're going to have enough time to be more creative. I think I'll take it away to the left. Joe Lewis, the new guy that came in from England, the strategist, I like that. I think he will come with new ideas. He will think like opposition was thinking, because he's been thinking like the opposition for 10 years against the Springboks. And I think he will be a good voice in there to understand how we're going to approach that, because Marks know how to throw to Lut and to Eben and to Nortje and to Pieter-Steph and to all of them. It depends on who's on the 16. We'll discuss that, but it might be Jan-Hendrik Wessels at throw. But that might be a bit more tricky. But Marks knows what to do and to expect, especially get them out of the blocks. So I think they will work on lineouts and ways of doing the lineouts that will be something that the All Blacks haven't seen. They will obviously do that.
Yeah, and I'll start with you of the front row. I think to me the most important selection of this entire match, because we like our scrums, and we know New Zealand's not that particularly keen on scrums for a variety of reasons. But I mean, we like the scrums, even though we be scrumming less and less often as well, and it's being sort of depowered in the sense that it's penalties are not really given easily. We saw it again last night. So you're thinking on the front row starting, and I suppose the burning question is, will Ox be ready?
Not that I've heard, so I'm going to play the Harry card here. My information is not that he's going to be available, and also I don't know if I want to risk him in this first game. So I would definitely, the first player you pick, again, it's like your backline. The first player you pick is Malcolm Marx, because you know he can go 80, and you know what value you get out of him, and he's been in very good form. And then you find the two props alongside him. So the other side, the tight head, definitely Thomas. And yeah, let's say Ox is not, which I suspect he won't be, then it's Gerard Steenekamp. That's as simple as that. And because you have Malcolm and you want him to go 80, that frees you up with what you can do on the bench again. So a lot of what you start with impacts what you can bring off the bench and how flexible you can be on the bench.
Yeah, I think Steenekamp, Marks, Tank is the logic, and I agree that it's difficult to bring a prop on, in particular, first game, no injury. I mean, injury, no practice, go. I mean, it's a tougher one. And also you leave yourself really hanging if Ox goes on and does the thing like the English prop did in the World Cup final, and he's off in the first 2 minutes. The whole thing is gone, yeah? So you don't mess around with that. Bring him on in Cape Town or, again, in Joburg, the third test. Then you have lots of options, because now we get into the option land. So I think the backups, to me, we're going to talk about Zach Porth, and we're going to talk about Jan-Hendrik Wessels being a prop or a hooker. Wilco, there's all kinds of things to talk about that. For sure, Arrie, I think it's Steenekamp, Marks, and Tank.
Yeah, I agree. And with those three, if Ox is not there, go Steenekamp to start, and with Max and with Thomas, obviously. And then I think Rassie forces us to think in X's and Z's and all kinds of creative things and stuff. But what also comes into play when that happens is to consider to have Jan-Hendrik as your Lucet reserve as well. And then you can have a guy like Marco van Staden on the field as well, like Jan earlier mentioned, to cover kind of for a two as well, if need be, but that extra loose forward, and then you can get maybe another Dixon, also Ben Jason Dixon, maybe also in the mix if there's an extra player to get in there. But I would think, it will Steenekamp before Bowen. I would pick him before Bowen Venter if that is the selection.
Harry, you mentioned Gerard Steenekamp, being I think the biggest penalty enforcer, whatever you want to call it, guy, scored the most penalties in the scrums in the URC. Is that correct? Do I remember that correct?
Yeah, he harvests you penalties, but he also is a really underrated carrier. He's also really mobile for his size, doesn't look it. And yet when you actually watch the video after the game, like, that guy, good, he motors. So, and Tank was, Thomas du Toit was one of the top try scorers from close range for Bath in the Prem, really good feet. So, and we know Mark's athleticism. So I think when you look at the pack, and I think this is what they do a lot, guys, is that the pack is athletic. If you're talking about Paul de Villiers and his incredible Bronco scores that he's scoring, Pieter-Steph, we know that he just goes and goes and goes. Ruan is a really quick lock, and then you have a mobile front row. I think that puts a lot of pressure on the All Blacks, who I'm not so sure their props are that mobile anymore. So yeah, that's interesting. I like this pack we picked, guys. I think it's all now down to what funny games we play with the reserve front row.
Can I just read out the team quickly so we're all on the same page here? I'm going to make the calls. It's now drum roll. So I've got Willemse, Colby, Hooker, sorry Jan, Jesse, Damien Dalende, Mani, Grant Williams, Visa, Pieter-Steph. I'm going to go Paul de Villiers because we all think that Sia is not going to be ready to start. I think that's a good point. And then Ruan Orkia Eben, Thomas Eto'o, Malcolm Marsh, and Gerard Steenekamp. But before we move on to the bench, because now we know what the team looks like, so now we can discuss the bench properly. But Arrie, I'm going to start with you. If Sia's not playing, who's the captain?
Sia's not playing, who's the captain? Quick on me, maybe Pieter-Steph was the one that was pushed forward mostly, and I think he was proven to in the recent games. So I think if Sia's not there, Pieter-Steph.
And you, Jan?
Pieter-Steph.
Yep, amen. I think the captain's always the one who already is the captain. I think he's the spiritual captain of the team.
Yeah. As jy sukkel sê, what did he say? Praat net mense. What did he say?
If you're scared, I'll translate it for the English guys. If you're scared, bleep, 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 speak.
Yeah, and Pieter-Steph always feels ashamed about that because he's not someone who swears a lot. And his most famous statement here, he's just dropping F-bombs.
All right. Let's move on to the bench. Let's start 16, 17, and 18. 16 being the hooker position, obviously. Arrie, you know what the starting lineup looks like. Who's your bench front row?
No, so Jan is messing with my mind. I kind of like his play there with Eskom doing that thing. And it appeals to me. And it has a bit of also what would Rassie do? And I think I can see him doing that. But I had written down Jan-Hendrik Wessels. Because I like the idea of having, it's almost like you're having a third prop on the bench as well if you need him. But yeah, that's what I had.
And then look at that, your hooker and your props.
She's probably, and Arie's making me think now about Wessels being my loose head prop.
Arie's got causing confusion today, man.
So the one thing I'm sure of is Zach Porthen at reserve tight head. I think they're very high on him. I love his carry stats. I love his dominant tackles. So I'm going with him. And then let me go Venter as reserve loosehead and Wessels as my reserve hooker. That's it.
And Ox is not available, so we're sort of down to Boan Venter, I think, almost by default. Not saying anything bad against him. I'm just thinking that's how it's going to play out. So no Volku for you.
No, I think there's a bit of a liability on defense there against this particular opponent.
Yeah.
I think I've hung my flag on the mast already. Marco at hooker at 16. Jan-Hendrik as the utility. And with Carlu, the data around Carlu, my question remains, the reason why I would have picked Carlo is, when you go into that last 20, do you want to scrum the All Blacks or do you want to run them ragged? And I think this All team is fit enough. So then you want to tie them by scrumming again and earning penalties and putting in their half. So, I know Zach Porthen is a really good guy. So if you feel you're in control enough and you want to run Zach Porthen, otherwise... I probably would go for your Bulls prop, or he's not Bulls anymore. He's now Stormers.
Yeah, don't say that out too loud. I mean, I saw it. Yeah, she's young. Arrie, your front row.
I had it written down as well. I'm tempted also what Jan just said now, but I think that he won't go for two players that's maybe potentially playing out of position with both Marco and both Jan-Hendrik. So I think he'll go for one, and I'll go for Jan-Hendrik also being the reserve hooker. There's flexibility. If there's more injuries, he can go to loose set as well if need be, and might stay on longer. So I'll go for also for Boan Venter for loose set to have a specialist there. And another specialist on the tight end. And it's also for me a bit of a 50-50 between Wilco and Zach. But I think what I heard from one or two people that was at some of the training said that Porthen was actually doing brilliant in the live scrums. And so if he's scrumming good enough there, we know that he's a bit more mobile to get in position in those moments where the All Blacks play a little bit more and get more maybe momentum. So I think I would go for Zach Porthen as the tight reserve.
Okay, my deciding vote is this. Jan-Hendrik Wessels, Boan Venter, and Zach Paulson. I mean, this guy was at school just the other day. I mean, this is sort of a meteoric rise, especially for a prop, don't you think, Harry?
Yeah, Weinberg, head prefect, very smart. He's off the charts on the gym. You know, his strength is ridiculous, but he's so young, so he's going to get stronger. And what I like about him is he has that sort of mongrel in him. Like when he lines someone up, like he ran over the English props. I think he took 2 of them to the ground and just sort of, had a giggle as he ran by them. I like that. I'm still a bit confused about how our bench is going to work, but I have faith in Jan and Arrie, and I think it's going to work fine. And the more I think about it, you have to have a banker. You have to have Lewitt or someone like that in the sky. Otherwise, nothing works.
I think an indication of how Rassie was thinking was the England game. That was the one game that he picked a 15 as strong as possible, his bench also. And in that game against England, the number 16 was Jan Hendrik and number 18 was Porthram. So that's maybe an indication as well.
All right. So we know Sasha and Reinach, that's our, we concurred on that. They're going to be the 9-10 backup. Reinach also, I suppose, being a bit of a utility back and go play wing and the like. So that's sorted. What's your loose forward locks cover look like?
I'll still go for Loerde Jager as my backup. If fit and if meeting all the requirements in training, then I will go for Marco van Staden as my number 6 for my 20 because I have Loerde and I have length there. It's a bit tough not to have Ben Jason Dixon in there as well. It will be he will compete with Loerde, but I think I will pick Loerde. And then Marco van Staden. And the reason I have Marco there is to have 80 minutes of pressure on that breakdown and possession, the way that they play. That is my 19 and 20. 21, I will go Reinach, 22, Sasha, and then Andre Esterhuizen as my third, my back line, and doubling up as a hybrid.
So only one lock on the bench for you?
Only one lock and one flank. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what he did. That's what he's been doing the last 5 games. He did that against Ireland, France, England, and against both tests against New Zealand. He went 5-3 exactly in this, with Esterhuizen being 4 of those 5 times being on the reserve bank.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I know this is not going to happen because you guys don't like Marco.
We overrule you.
I know. But I'm still going to explain why I picked these 2 lots, because in my team, Marco would start with a 16 or would play with a 16 jersey. And then my backup locks would be Loerde and Kobus Wiese. And then Andre is my backup loose forward. And I know him and Marco are both hybrids, but that means you still got that mobility. Just remember, you got Marco, who's really mobile, and Andre, who's actually a center and has got insane skills. So you can play loose forward. And if anything happens, he can come on and Marco has to go to hooker, then Marco can go to hooker. And you still got that mobility and strength. I mean, Andre is a monster with a ball in hand. I've seen him stand next to the locks. They can throw him up in the air in the lineout. He's so tall. So yeah, that would have been mine. Loerde, Kobus, and Andre.
Harry?
Okay, so we got our front row reserves and we got Andre, Sasha, Kobus picked. So for me, it's just picking 2 forwards on the bench. And the hybrid utility word keeps coming back to me, and having them not be able to run us off our feet. I want athletic hybrid guys, but you got to be able to kill a mole, and you've got to be able to run one, and you've got to be a legitimate third target at lineout. So for me, that's Wiese and Dixon. Unlucky for Cameron, Elrich, and Dion Fourie and Marco. My reasoning is the 2 of them look really good together. They clean rucks well. They are hyper athletic and belligerent, and they're also form players. And I think that it will give. They're not guys that the All Blacks know that well, and I worry a bit about Lewitt's tendency to get injured around the shoulders and chest. Older, you just keep getting the same injuries because the same injury's still there. And then I also worry a little bit about focusing, on the wrong part of the game. I think the game's going to be won at the breakdown or not. I think that's going to be most important.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do this tiebreaker because, we've got Harry with Wiese and Ben Jason Dixon. Surprise, surprise. And then we've got Arrie with Loot and Marco van Staden. Now, you don't have your preferred front row, so you know now it's going to be Jan-Hendrik Wessels, Bo Unfiltered, and Zachary Porthen. Who would you choose those two? Who would you select them if you can't have Marco at hooker?
I'm still going to go with Loot and Kobus and Andre Esterhuizen. I know that you have to, if I go with Harry's reasoning, then you do pick Kobus Wiese and then Marco goes on to the loose forward combination. And Harry sort of answered it. I was going to ask him the question, is he dropping Loot? And if you're scared that it's not going to last the pace and in this crucial first test and you need him a bit longer to get his fitness up, then Wiese and Marco will be then on the bench.
Wiese and Marco. Harry, you happy with that?
Oh no, I defer to the wisdom, and I love. First of all, this team's going to win, so I'm happy.
So it's Wiese and Marco. Let me just make a note. Arrie, you happy with that?
Yes, happy. Yes.
I think this is the most considered podcast I've heard in a long time. I mean, all the wise heads and myself as well. Not that wise. So let me just rephrase that. The final thing, Arrie, yeah.
No. I just want to say, I think point taken that about Loot. I think maybe the doubt in that shoulder and the fitness might come into it a bit more than we think. But I know that Rassie loves him. So if he comes through the training, he's going to be very hard not to pick.
All right, so I'm going to just read the bench for old time's sake. Jan-Hendrik Wessels, Bo Unfiltered, Zachary Porthen, Kobus Wiese, Marco van Staden, Andre Esterhuizen, Sasha and Reinach. So I'll just make the numbers right on the screen, so don't worry about that.
Okay.
Right.
It's good.
Harry, what are your final thoughts?
I think this team could stretch. They can run. I don't see any tired in this team. I think they can play both ways. So if they have to, they can. If they chase a game, they can do it. But I also think it could be, most importantly, it could stamp the style of the game they want to play on the pitch. This is the most important thing, is who can dominate the style choice, who can force the other to play how they want to play. I like this team.
Jan?
Yeah, I think the starting pack is what impresses, because they can put the screws in and our defense on the back line, we'll put that squeeze in, and you've got some really good players that can fall back and chase those kicks when the All Blacks, or chip those chip kicks and cover the edges. So I think there's a pack that can put the squeeze on, or as we used to say, the slow poison, put in the slow poison, and then you bring some really, given this bench we're going with, you can really turn up the heat in the last 20. So literally give the All Blacks a taste of their own medicine.
Yeah, I think it's a team that is picked that can play to their own strengths. That's important, firstly, to play the rugby they want to play and can play. But it's also a team that's versatile enough to plug the holes, to play almost like a preventative rugby, to challenge the loose ball, to be more mobile when it's needed, etc., from the threat that there is from the All Blacks. So they're a team that can play their own game, but flexible enough from up to 23 to be able to also need to be preventative in a way.
Right, I'm going to just finish off this. Once again, this is not our prediction of what the team would look like. This is simply a team that we would have chosen if we were the selectors. It's a bit of a fun thing to do on a Sunday afternoon. So thank you guys for all of you. We can all go have a Sunday afternoon nap now because you're old men, like we said. So the 4 worms, thank you for that. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Awesome, thanks.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megafoon Rugby.